This here is Pablo. Pablo, you did very good today, buddy. I'm giving him a second bully stick, so he should be pretty happy. So this is Pablo's roadmap to success. Now, we went through a number of issues. The primary issue that the Guardians has is they're concerned about how he behaves around other people. He, maybe on the kitchen table for right now. The Guardian's sharing a piece of cake with me. This is the first time after 2,500 sessions anyone's offered me cake, so I must have hit a lucky day here. Okay, so now the Guardian's worried. He's a Pitbull. They have a lot of people are prejudiced against Pitbull. Pitbulls are no more prone to being aggressive than any other breed of dog. They can simply bite harder than other breeds of dogs, and they can do more damage. That's why it's really important that we're a responsible dog guardian like Pablo's Guardians and reaching out for help when we feel like the dog's behavior needs a little bit of work. So Pablo, how about we go over here? Come here, buddy. So are we gonna sit? Oh, sit. That's a good job of passive training, which we'll talk about here in a second. So basically, anytime that we're on a walk with him and he starts pulling towards another dog or person, we want to stop. Now, one of the videos above is to teach him to stop pulling on the leash. And so we're just going to stop as soon as the leash gets tense. We're going to turn to the side as I showed in that video and call him and have him come back to us and give him that treat. So we're going to teach him when we get to the end of the leash, the proper thing to do is come back to the human. I'm going to put that right there and let you chew on it yourself, buddy. See if he chews on it here or goes somewhere else to chew on it. This is his bed, so I'm sure he'll stay here. Okay, so we don't want to let him pull us towards another dog or person, and there's nothing wrong with somebody coming by on the street, another dog or person, and not letting him interact. I don't want him to think that it's my right to interact with every dog that I meet with. Otherwise, if we let him have everything he wants, just like if we have a child and we give the child everything it wants, after a while we have a spoiled or a petulant child. We want the dog to understand that sometimes it's not appropriate to meet another dog because the other dog might be injured, it might be elderly, the person might not be comfortable around pit bulls. We don't want to force the situation. So we're not going to allow him to pull us anywhere. Let me see, in the house, kind of going backwards from the end of the session, but one of the things, Pablo does not like walking on the floor. It's probably because it's laminate or shiny. This is why it's so important when you have a puppy to socialize them and get them on all these different surfaces. The Guardians here have done what a lot of the Guardians that have dogs with this problem that I've worked with do, is they've put extra rugs around. And after a while, the dog kind of starts playing Frogger, leaping from one to the next. What I found the best way to deal with this situation is to remove all the rugs, because there's nothing wrong with him walking on the floor. It's just an aversion to it. Now, if we give him a sanctuary, he's going to kind of try staying with that sanctuary. So what we want to do is remove all the rugs for about a month or so. Give him a chance to be able to get used to walking on the floor, laying on the floor, nothing bad happens. He has a dog bed, so he does have a soft place that he can lay on if he's cold. But this way we help him get over that fear rather than band-aiding the fear. All right, sorry, I'm just hearing a truck outside. I want to make sure it's not a tow truck towing my car, but I have a deal on it, so I should be fine. It's Beverly Hills, not Santa Monica. All right, it's UPS. Okay, so let me see. One of the things we would like to do is teach him that sitting is a good behavior. A lot of times when we have a dog that has behavior problems, we haven't actually taught the dog how we want it to behave. So a couple of things I shared, some of the dog training tips I shared with the Guardians were petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose, for those who watch my blogs a lot, is basically just simply asking the dog to do something before we pet it. Even if you just want to pet the dog, but especially if the dog comes up and nudges at you or scratches at you, if he nudges me and tells me what to do and I pet him, after a while that tells him that he is in charge or responsible for me. That adds pressure to or responsibility to his shoulders, and from that responsibility comes some pressure, and that can lead to him being more reactive. And I think that's one of the factors that led to him nipping someone. So basically what we're going to do is, instead of him being able to tell the humans what to do, he comes up to the humans and nudges them. We tell him to sit. When he sits, we're going to pat him under his chin and say just the word sit. Or how do I say sit?
Shev.
Shev. I'm learning some Hebrew. And so this way, we're going to teach him the command word for it and associate the command word with the action with the reward. After a while, what will happen is he's going to come and start sitting in front of us to prepay. And that's a new way of asking for attention. We actually have a term for this. It's called manding, or learning to mand. So if we teach him the only way the human's going to pet you is by sitting, he's going to start adopting that behavior in different situations. Passive training is simply waiting for the dog to do a desired action on its own and then rewarding them within that 3-second window while saying the command word. So if he comes over to me, I'm going to pet him and say come. If he sits down on his own, I'm going to pet him and say sit. If he lays down, I'm going to pet him and say crash. So what we're doing is just basically narrating. Now, anything that he does unusual that you want to brand and mark as a command, you can simply use passive training for this. One of his unusual things that he does is he gets on the hardwood floor and when he starts thinking about it, he starts walking backwards. Well, I have a retreat command for my dog. So maybe when he does that, come here, Pablo, come here, buddy. When he starts walking backwards, we either say the word retreat or pet him and say the word retreat and start to associate that word. So this way, if he's on our way and we say retreat, he knows to back up. That can be a very helpful command. Let me see. Come here, buddy. Yes, I know. I'm hogging the bed, aren't I? Come over here. He's like, I don't want this guy in my bed. Come here. You got plenty of room there, buddy. I know I have a big butt, but it's not that big. Okay. Let me see. So passive training and petting with a purpose are the two easiest things the guardian's getting to do to train him. As long as the humans get in the habit, it'll take you about a month to get in the habit of doing that. So if you catch yourself petting the dog and you didn't ask him to sit, stop. Tell him to sit. As soon as he sits, start petting him. Now, petting is also another great way to disagree with your dog. Let's say I'm petting Pablo and he gets excited and he jumps up on me. If I immediately stop petting him as soon as he jumps up, after a while I'm teaching him, as soon as I jump up, the human loses interest in petting me. So because I like being petted, I'll stop jumping up. That's kind of a little bit of a version of what I showed in the second video above where we went over how to teach him to stop jumping up on people at the door. Now the technique that I showed you at the door, we can use that outside as well. If we have somebody, if he's more jumpy with people on the street, we might use that technique and just tie the leash around one of the posts of the fence right out in front. What I usually do is take the end of the leash, run it around the post, then run the leash through the handle, and that makes a little bit of a lariat. That way he's secured to the fence. And that way if people are coming by and you say, hey, can you help us teach our dog not to jump? Now, he's a pit bull, so some people might be afraid of him. Don't ask those people to do it. Just get people who are going to be comfortable. But the more we ask him to sit, whether it's petting him or at this, to go out a door or whatever it is, the more that he's going to be inclined to do that. That leads me to something else we talked about on the walk, is when we go on a walk, I'd like to have the guardians have a handful of treats with them. As we're walking down the street, in between each building, stop, or not necessarily in between each building, that's the code that I use, maybe in between each sidewalk or every 10 paces or whatever you want, we're just going to stop, tell him to sit. As soon as he sits, we're going to pop the treat in his mouth and say sit, and then we're going to continue walking. If we keep on doing this every walk for about a week or 2 weeks, after a while we stop, he'll just sit down automatically on his own. And people will say, you have such a well-behaved dog, and you're like, of course, we hired doggone problems. But no, we're just teaching him that this is the behavior we want. When we stop, I want you to sit. And by repeating it on our regular walks when there are no distractions, after a while he'll start doing it all the time. Let me see, what else do we go over? Some rules. He's only allowed on one couch in the house, and he is good with that. I would not try to get him up on other couches for now, because for dogs higher they sit, the more ranker status they have. Now I would, another rule that I would have is when any humans are eating food, he can't be within 7 feet of that human while the human is eating food, no matter where the human is. Once the food is gone, then he can come back to being around them. To be within 7 feet of a human is eating, if he is not actively begging, is inappropriate for a dog. We use the martingale with a special twist of the leash to stop him from pulling. The guardians are going to need to go get themselves a 4-foot straight leash and then apply the special twist of the leash before we go out for walks. Now, the stop pulling technique is something that's different than using the martingale. So what I would do is when we go out for a walk, well, a couple other things. When we're going for a walk, as we're going down the stairs, we're going to stop suddenly each flight of stairs once or twice. Don't let the dog run ahead of you. So we're teaching him another opportunity to stay next to us. Here, I'll get that for you, buddy. And if you see your dog scratching at a place like that, so you can help your dog out by kind of scratching it for him. Sometimes they can get themselves fine, like he can scratch this fine, but that was a good one, huh? Yes. You see, he turned, he appreciated that. So sometimes they're scratching, and it's hard for them to scratch a certain place. We like to have our significant other, somebody scratch our backs. We can do that for the dog, and just a nice way to let them know that we're looking out for him. Well, evidently, I didn't do a good job. He's going back for seconds himself. Let me see, what else? I went through the door claiming exercise. If you go to my website, you should be able to search for door, and some write-ups will come up. Look, actually, the better way to do it, when you go to my website, go to Dog Training Tips, look for the titles, and there'll be a title of something behave at the door. When you have one of those, look at the middle video on that. It'll show you the technique that I showed the guardians how to practice claiming the area around the door. Now Dad is giving her, I'm going to let you go ahead and practice that yourself because I'm doing this, but the dad actually knocks because he wants to have her practice this technique that I'm actually talking about right now, talking about serendipity. So the more that we practice that, eventually the dog will stay behind that line by themselves. Remember, Turn your back to the door, walk towards the dog, past the line, and then walk backwards. Okay, as you're walking backwards, stop in between each step to teach the dog what to go. He went way away from the door. Eventually he'll stay closer, and he's doing the backwards walk right now. So when you see him walking backwards down the hallway, pet him and say retreat or reverse. That's a great command that will be very helpful. This is the dog bed, and he uses the dog bed all the time, but we moved it to this location. If you're going to have a dog bed in your room, I prefer to have it underneath the TV, because in the dog's perspective, we're looking at the dog the whole time. So to teach the dog to use the dog bed, I put a treat on the dog, or we actually tossed a treat on the dog bed. When he came over and licked it up, we said the word Disney. That's the word that means go to the dog bed. I would have a different word for each dog bed, and I would have a dog bed in every room that the dog hangs out in. Now, one of the rooms, one of the guardians didn't want to have the dog sleeping there. That's totally fine. We still have the bed in there, and maybe just put the bed up or put it under the human's bed whenever it's time for the dog to leave the room. But this way the dog has a safe place to go, and instead of trying to want to get on the couch or the furniture, he's going to come here. Now, something I didn't talk to the guardians about, but that I would like them to do, is teaching him. The more commands and tricks that he knows, the more confident he will be. Just like humans, the more skills we have, the better self-esteem is. So what I'd like the humans to do, we have one human that might be a little bit young for this one, and I have a special thing we're going to talk about for her. But for everybody else in the house, maybe we have an exercise where each Sunday or Monday or whatever day of the week we want, whoever turn it is in the family is going to go to YouTube and they're search for dog tricks or dog commands. Make sure they're easy. We don't make them too difficult. Maybe we're going to teach him to balance a treat on his nose. So you go to YouTube, you find there'll be a bunch of videos that'll teach you how to do it in different ways. If your dog isn't responding in one way, look for a different video that teaches it a different way. It should only be using positive reinforcement. If you're trying to force the dog, we don't want to use those techniques. And then basically, let's say our cameraman Adam here, it's his turn first. He teaches Pablo to balance a treat on his nose, and then when we say eat, he goes like this and snaps it out of the ear and gobbles it up. Well, once Adam's taught the dog how to do this, then he's going to teach everybody in the family how to do it with the dog, and that week we're all going to practice teaching the dog that trick. So we're going to rep it a lot. And then the next week, his sister's going to take over, and she's going to find a trick or a command, and she's going to teach him how to do it, and then she's going to teach everyone else in the family how to do it. I like everyone to go to YouTube and pick 2 tricks or commands. Mom and Dad have final say, so we pick one, we show Mom and Dad, hey, can I teach him this? Make sure that, again, they're not too hard. And then, yes, that's fine. So this way, at the end of, when we're done with this, the dog should have 8 new tricks or commands. That's going to be a real nice boost for his self-esteem. And that's also going to help the humans engender a little bit more of a respectful relationship with the dog, because they're educating and teaching him, and he's going to have a better better feeling of them because they are associated with helping him feel better. Now we have the special princess of the house who just came over and she's checking out the camera work that her brother's doing. And one of the things I like to do when I have little kids is a lot of times little kids do things with dogs that are inappropriate. And so one of the things is she loves her dog, and the dog loves her, and that's a wonderful relationship. But sometimes the dog might feel like it's a little bit tired and it needs a little bit of time to itself. So one of the rules that I would come up with is anytime that he is here on any of the dog beds, he is not allowed to be called off, and we don't go petting with him for the certain youngest member of the tribe. And this way, Pablo has some safe places that he can go to. Now, we need to give the youngest member of the tribe some incentive to do some of these things that we like. So for petting with the purpose of passive training, we're going to reward her. So we're going to get an M&M, and we're going to have a special jar with this beautiful girl's name on it. Every time that she does something that she's supposed to do, she asks the dog to sit and then pets the dog afterwards for sitting. Or the dog comes to her and she pets the dog and says here, or come, for passive training. Or whatever it is, something that's appropriate, where she's going to go tell Mom or Dad or her brother or sister, and they're going to go get an M&M out of the bag and go pop it into the jar. And then at the end of the day, she's going to take that jar and dump it on her plate and then count up the number of M&Ms that she had. If she had more M&Ms than the day before, maybe she gets a special prize. Mom and Dad will figure this out, how they want to do this. But this way, and then maybe at the end of the day, she gets those as dessert, or if Mom and Dad don't want to have sugar that late, maybe she gets those as dessert for lunch the next day. Now the child has an incentive to do good things for the dog, and things that are positive. They're going to help the dog. The dog right now is farting, so I'm smelling some interesting smells. But this is going to give her an incentive to want to do the positive things with the dog and help her train the dog and help her want to train the dog because she gets the M&Ms as a reward. Now, let's say that the dog's over here and somebody recognizes that she goes over and she's trying to interact with the dog while he's on a safe place. Well, when we go over and we say, oh, I have to take an M&M away from that. Would you like to earn this M&M back? And she says, sit, and pets him under his chin and says, sit. We put the M&M back in the jar. So this way we create a more of a positive association and a reason for her to want to interact with the dog in a positive way, which will help the dog respect her a little bit more and listen to her a little bit more because it's rewarding to do so. And she'll want to engage with the dog even more because she gets chocolate, desserts, and fun stuff. Now, a couple other things. A lot of us talk way too much to our dog. And we have a multilingual family here that speaks 2 languages. And if we want to give each command in English and in Hebrew, that's wonderful. But we want to be careful we don't have 10 versions of English and 10 versions of Hebrew. Come here, over here boy, dog's name, whistle, tap my thigh. Now he has to listen for a lot of different words. So I'd like to have 1 Hebrew word and 1 English word for each command and only those words. So if you catch somebody saying come here, we say, vocabulary. And if somebody says vocabulary to you, you say, come. And then when the dog comes to us, we pet it and say just the word come. This way we make it easier for the dog to understand what's going on. Something else we went over was teaching the dog to come on command. Now when we're doing this, I like to hold the treat like this before I call the dog. Now I'm going to hold it sideways so you can see I want a 45-degree bend in my elbow. I want my forearm parallel with the floor because the height of the treat matters. If I start out like this, I'm already holding it too high. So I want to be holding it here. And when the dog looks at me, I'm holding my hands in a position where it looks like I have a treat. Now if the dog doesn't, I'm going to say come once. If he looks at me and doesn't come, or doesn't even look at me, then I'm going to make a kissing sound. The dog will turn and look. As soon as he looks at me, if he doesn't start coming, I'm going to start lowering my hand, and I'll go all the way to the floor if I have to. The lower it goes, the more accessible it is for the dog. Eventually, the dog's going to come over to you. When it does, I raise it over its head in an arc, and then as soon as the dog's butt hits the ground, I lower the treat, let it lick it off my hand, and then I use my fingers to tickle under the chin to facilitate a nose-up orientation. When a dog feels good about itself, his nose is parallel to the ground or tilted upward. So whenever we pet the dog to reward him, we like to pet him under his chin. We never want to pat him on top of the head. We can scratch and we can caress, just never pat him. But when we do this, we want to start off in the living room with at least 3 people. And then once the dog starts coming to us consistently, then we're going to have one person go maybe to the dining room table, or to the bench over there, or the front room in the back, or one of the bedrooms. He's going to have to gradually go further and further away. Now this should be very progressive and gradual. Don't move somebody too far away right away. We want to build up his ability to do this and his confidence, his want to, because he gets a reward every time. At the end of that exercise, he was literally bouncing over to the next person, which is great to see. But we want him to understand that when we ask you to come to us, doesn't represent the end of playtime at the park or the end of chewing your bone. It means come to me and get something great. And so the more we practice that, the better it will be and easier it will be to get him to come to us. Let me see what else. For the dog park, when we go to the dog park, we want to continue going to the dog park. I think that stimulation is good for him. He unfortunately had a bad experience at the dog park where another pit bull, it must have been a Cane Corso or something like that, because his head was in another pit bull and he's got a big head. So when I go to the dog park, I study the dog park before I go inside. And if there are dogs that are playing too rough and the guardians are not interrupting, there's nothing wrong with not going in the dog park. What I might do is actually walk around the exterior of the dog park and practice sitting. So he gets to see the other dogs, he gets to smell the other dogs, and also it helps him be desensitized. Just because we go to the dog park doesn't always mean we're going in the dog park. That will help him settle himself down a little bit. So if I go to the dog park and I stand outside and all the dogs seem to be pretty well behaved, then I go in a little staging area. You open the gate, there's a little box, you take your dog's leash off. I make my dog sit before I take the leash off. If he won't sit, then I don't take the leash, and as soon as he sits, I take the leash off right away. Are you still rolling? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then when he gets, all the other dogs are going to come and approach. They want to swarm him when he comes in. Well, he's probably okay with that, but it would make him feel more comfortable to have some distance. So once he comes in there, I just wait for the other dogs to lose interest and walk away. Then I might touch the gate clasp. That squeaking or metal sound will probably attract the other dogs to come. Let him come. Don't open the gate. Let him walk away. Do it a couple times. Eventually, they kind of stay away. Then when I open the gate, I let him go out into the dog park, and he doesn't feel immediately accosted. Some of the tricks you can do is also taking your dog out to get a little exercise before you go to the dog park. A lot of people look at the dog park as the place to exercise your dog. But if it runs into the dog park, that's kind of showing up the other dogs. That might make the other dogs want to trip your dog or go after your dog to prove, hey, Betty, you better take it down a notch. So if your dog comes into the dog park a little bit more relaxed, that's going to help him feel more comfortable. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who have misconceptions about pit bulls. And the guardian mentioned sometimes they go to the dog park and people with little dogs will like take their dogs and go away. And they're like, if you're going to keep them in there, keep them on a leash. You should never have your dog in a leash in a dog park unless it's a very specific training situation, because it puts your dog at a disadvantage. Fight or flight are the two common responses dogs have. The leash prevents them from flighting, so oftentimes that can generate a fight. So that's why, again, I observe the dog park before I go inside to make sure it's a good environment for my dog. My job is to be my advocate for my animal and to put him in situations where he's going to feel comfortable and he's going to thrive. And if it's not a safe environment, as a guardian, it's my responsibility to say it's not right for you today. We're going to go walk around the exterior of the park. Maybe as you're walking around the exterior of the dog park, the dogs that are the culprits leave. Well, then you get done, then you can go in the dog park. But we want to make sure the dog park is a good, safe, happy place for him. Also for stimulation-wise, that's very appropriate. It's good for social skills. So we want to try to take him to the dog park as much as we can. Also for walks, we'd like to take him on different walks. If we take him the same walk every day, after a while, it's not as much fun. So try to pick a different route. Go this way one day, the next day go a different way. Look for different ways to stimulate him. The more stimulation he gets, the more better exercise he's going to get, the more socially adept he is, and the better he's going to be in terms of just feeling, having a good quality of life. The last thing I want to talk about is feeding. For dogs, they eat in the order of their rank. I'm getting over a cold, which is why I sound a little raspy. So if we feed the dog and then we eat after the dog, we're putting the dog in a leadership position. So what I do is I put food down in the bowl and I don't let the dog eat the food. Right now the guardian's kind of free feeding him. They're putting food down, but he doesn't eat it all. So I put the food down and I call the dog over and invite him to eat. When he takes his first bite, I would say one word command that means eat. So I say grub, chow, and feast for my 3 dogs. When the dog whose word is grub, when he takes his first bite, I say the word grub for about 2 months. After a while, I say grub, and to him grub means I have food in my mouth. It must mean time to eat. The other 2 dogs, when they hear grub, there's no food in their mouth, so that word doesn't mean anything to them. So that's another example of passive training. So come up with a word that means eat. Now, if you're not going to actually eat a meal yourself, you're going out to a brunch or something, just get a chip or cracker, eat it in 5 or more bites, then give him permission to eat. He goes over and sniffs the bowl, walks away. As soon as he walks away, pick up the bowl, dump the food out, put the empty bowl back down. 99.9% of the time, they'll come and lick the empty bowl. Well, what's happening? Well, when you walk away, you're saying you're not hungry. In dogs, they eat in the order of the rank of the wild. If he goes to eat, and he's like, let's say number 5 in a rank of 10 dogs, and he goes up there, he's like, I don't feel like eating right now, I'll eat later. When he walks away, number 6 is going to eat his portion. When he comes back at the end, when he is hungry, there'll be no food. So when dogs eat, typically they eat right away when they're supposed to. So sorry, buddy, go ahead and eat chew on your bully stick. So basically, by us eating something first and then giving him permission to eat and then removing the empty food, every time he walks by the bowl, he notices it's empty. It's empty. That's why we don't put the bowl up. We dump the bowl and put the empty bowl back on the floor. That way, there's only 2 or 3 times a day for a couple minutes each time when there's food in there. That means that's a precious time, and that's the time to take advantage. Now, if you're feeding him like a cup, he should clean his plate. So if you're feeding him a cup each meal, and he's only eating 3/4 of a cup, start feeding him 3/4 of a cup. Eventually, you can go back to adding a full cup in there. But we want him to get into a habit of eating all of his food right away. Well, I can't really think of anything else. I'm sure I'm probably leaving some things out, and the guardians can always call me or text me if they have questions. Now, they might want to set up a follow-up session where we actually teach him to walk at a heel without needing a leash. We'd still use the leash because it's the law, but that's a different technique, and we had a lot to cover in this session. Pablo. Come here, buddy. Come here. Pablo. No, he's like, I'm not having it. I was going to have him come over here for the end of the video, but Pablo's got a bully stick and he's content. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you meet him.